Okay, I'm going to give a quick short lecture on the textile industry, what to expect in the next 5 years. Just a disclaimer, do not have a crystal ball, so what I'll be sharing with you are predictions rather than actualities. I don't want anyone chasing me down and saying, you told me this on stage and it didn't happen. So it's just what to expect. So I'm going to start off first about who I am. My name is Muchaneta Napel, and I'm the founder of Innovate. I'm actually the founder of various little projects that I like to do, but the first one is Innovate. And what we do is that we translate policy in a fashion voice. So most of you, as you know, a lot of EU legislations are coming into play. So for the fashion industry, they have no idea what that means and how they can comply. So my role in that is to basically help the industry better understand how they can comply to the new legislations. I'm also founder of Fashion Nerd. Fashion Nerd is a new site that focuses on translating technology in a fashion voice. Because there's a lot of innovations taking place in the fashion industry, and a lot of the people in the industry have no clue what it means. You know, what are you talking about when you say about digital or digitalizing? What do you mean when you're talking about transparency and DPP? So what I do is that I translate all this innovation in a fashion voice so the industry can better understand what it means to adopt different technologies. I'm also a lecturer, if you can't tell. I lecture at the London College of Fashion, and what I do there is I talk about innovation to the students. I get them really excited and riled up about the idea of really adopting new technologies. I also lecture at the Condé Nast College of Fashion. I guest lecture there also about innovation, and I've given a workshop at the Zurich University of Arts. Innovation consultant, which means I go in, I work with fashion brands, and I help them understand what type of technology they want to adopt. My first question to them is, are you adopting technology because you want a good PR campaign? Or are you adopting technology because you want to make long-term strategic action on how your company goes? Because that's very, very different. Okay, and since last year, this is the last slide about my CV, I've been working with the UN. I know, the idea of collaborating with fashion and UN makes no sense to some people, but I think it makes perfect sense because a lot of people within the creative industry are not really involved in working with the UN to the extent that they should be. So we need more voices in this space and be able to kind of translate what it is the industry requires. So that's kind of what I do. It's a new role. And I also am a board member at the Fashion Innovation Center, which is a company in Sweden who are giving a fabulous workshop this afternoon. So all you fashionistas out there who want to know more about innovation, make sure you attend at 3 o'clock today in the back. Okay, so let's start. So what's the current state of the textile industry? How many of you, hands up, think that the current state is wonderful, brilliant, we don't need to change? Fantastic, 0. That's what I wanted to see. The current state right now is that we're at a point of educating the industry. And I do sometimes feel like we've been at this point for a very long time. We need to figure out how can we, as an industry, do better. One of the problems is textile waste. How are we going to solve this problem? I think most of it starts with overproduction and kind of starting at that beginning of creating the product. How can we create more products that people actually want to wear and want to keep, rather than create that one-off garment that people throw away? Because at the end, when it comes to landfill waste, it's a really big problem. A couple of weeks ago, I was at the Global Fashion Summit, and I was attending one of the talks, and one of the people from Ghana came to showcase, like, this is the waste that we have in Ghana coming from the global north. And this person threw the waste on the stage, like, look, H&M, Marks and Spencer's, you guys are giving us waste that we can do nothing with. So it's super important that us as an industry start to really think about how can we make it so we take those baby steps to making our landfill waste less. Also, a lot of the textile waste, I love this, a lot of textile waste is being used in home furnishing. So imagine taking textile waste that we don't need and giving them a second life by creating products with it, soft furnishings. This is another way that the industry is really trying to figure out how to create useful waste and how to actually make money out of waste. Rather than dumping it, which is what we're used to doing, it's like, oh, we don't need this anymore, let me just throw it away. How can we change our mindset and find a way of using our waste and making sure we do it properly? So when it comes to future trends, I mean, how many of you follow trends? I'm sure you all follow trends. That's better. How many of you follow technology trends? Like what's going on in the tech space? One person in the back. Oh, and someone over there as well was listening in. Following future trends when it comes to innovation is really important because you need to understand what technology is out there that you can kind of showcase and also you can actually use in your strategy. These are some of the reasons why it's important. The bottom line. One thing we mustn't forget when it comes to innovating and sustainability in general, it can make you money. Most people think about sustainability as something that will make them lose money, something that will cost too much to do. Actually, in the long run, being sustainable actually will end up making you more money than losing it. Those who will lose the money in the next 5 years are the ones who refuse to be sustainable. They can join Topshop in the graveyard of brands that refuse to change. So it's super important to always kind of rework your mind when it comes to making money. Like, how can I be more sustainable and still be able to kind of have a healthy bottom line? Another one is brand relevance. I put this in there because a lot of consumers are really, really kind of like not buying into brands telling them that they're sustainable anymore. And to remain relevant, you need to be able to come up with things that consumers actually want to buy. You need to be transparent. You need to be truthful. You need to show that you're progressing. It's not about making your next collection in mycelium, which is mushroom, by the way. It's about showing progression. It's about being, yes, I'm trying to do less good rather than doing bad. Sustainability trends. That word sustainability, and I put trends on the end, but the word sustainability means very different things to everyone in this room, which is a big problem, which is why the fashion industry sometimes is really hard to say whether a brand is sustainable or not. But the good news is that legislations are coming into play that's going to equal that playing field so everyone has a better understanding of what that word sustainability means. And it means that everyone will be able to adhere to the rules. So following the trends of sustainability is good, but also just be aware that that word means different things to different people. E-commerce growth. One thing COVID did is that it made online shopping something very sexy and attractive to many people because all of us were stuck indoors and we were shopping a lot. So what brands did is that a lot of them invested in different types of technology to help them reach the customer that they could not reach anymore because they couldn't leave the home or they were limited in terms of coming out. So in terms of e-commerce, it's grown ridiculously big, and a lot of brands are relying a lot on the new innovations that have come into play to help them actually expand. Technology integration. How many of you have actually integrated technology in any of your businesses? Blockchain, anyone? No? Someone in the back? What have you integrated, just out of curiosity? I'm sorry, can someone give the lady a mic? I'm just out of curiosity, want to know who's integrated technology. If you look behind you, there's a man behind you who'll give you a mic.
So I try to use the 3D cutting program and try to transport it to the metaverse so I can do something there and try to see how the pattern fits and stuff like that.
And how have you found it?
Well, I find it really difficult for me to see which program really works because on the front end they all seem really good, all of them. And then when you try them, like 2 days later, you see that a lot of bugs coming up there and there's a lot of difficult stuff that you have to learn on top. So there's no like easy solution. And it's not like every program does the same stuff. It's always like you have to learn again and again and again. And it's difficult to find a really good program that really does what it promises. For me, I think that's...
Do you know what? You make a really valid point, and I'll tell you why that is.
Yeah.
Right now, you're using the Nokia phone right now. You know, you need to look at the potential of that Nokia phone becoming an iPhone at some point in the future. And the more we adopt different types of technology, the more we kind of embrace it, the more better it becomes. So when you look at new technology and someone says to you, go and check out that innovation, it's amazing, it'll do wonders for your company, and then you check it out and you're like, no, this is not what I want. look at the potential of the innovation, not so much what it's offering you today, but what it can offer you tomorrow. Because a lot of the technology that is available at the moment, some of it is still kind of working. It's still kind of figuring it out, getting all the bugs out, seeing what works. And the more of you that adopt it, the better it becomes. So I think the technology maybe you're using is Nokia, but I can foresee it becoming an iPhone at some point in the future. So don't give up on it, is my point. Consumer behavior. This is a really big topic, and the reason why I put it in my presentation, because we can't talk about textiles in 5 years if we don't talk about consumer behavior. Consumers are very bright these days. They're very good with that Google search. So when it comes to who your customer is, you need to understand that anything that you share with them, they can find out really quickly whether you are actually truthful or not being truthful, because they're only a Google search away from it. So it's super important to really think about your consumer, think about what it is that they have access to, and when you are making sustainability claims as a textile brand, can you actually live up to them? Think about that, because a lot of people, I feel like it's an afterthought, the customer. But the customer's bright these days, so you can't really fool them with words and marketing tools. They will find out. And the good thing about that is that there's a lot of technology out there that will help you be transparent step by step. Talking about transparency, I always find that when it comes to transparency, the fashion industry in general doesn't like to tell its secrets. A lot of them are lone rangers, but we're all coming to that realization that it's no longer a me problem, it's a we problem. So it takes all of us to solve it. So to be transparent is something that is not only required these days, it's actually going to become legal at some point, where a company will have to show how their textile is made and who made it. And I feel like a lot of fashion brands are not equipped to kind of provide that information. But the good news is there are technologies out there, innovation solutions out there that are helping fashion brands understand the supply chain better and be more transparent. And it's these solutions that are going to help a lot of brands comply to the new EU legislations that are going to be coming into play. But the thing is, you cannot go to these solutions and knock on their door 2 months before you're supposed to comply and say, help me, please. It takes like 1 year to 2 years to put certain innovations in place in your company. So if the legislation is saying to you, you've got to comply by 2026, you've got to give yourself at least 2 years in able to put that in place for yourself. Rental and resale. These are areas that are really growing and becoming quite popular. I mean, how many of you will actually rent your clothes if you could? Really? Okay, let me give you this one. There's a new company that started to a rental business model, and what they're doing is, like, for example, you come into Munich to attend Munich Fabric Start, but you don't travel with any garments at all. What happens is that your luggage is basically provided for you in the hotel. So you show up with the clothes that you picked online, and they show up in your hotel room. You wear them while you're in Munich. You leave them in your hotel room, and then you go home. So you literally have no luggage. So they're kind of renting garments for your business trips, which kind of helps you not have to pay for luggage. How many of you would rent those garments to travel for work? That's much better. Okay, because I would too. Means I don't have to carry my heavy bag. So when it comes to rental and resale, I see this as something that's going to really pick up. The problem I find of why it's not so popular is that we're putting new ideas into an old business model. And when you put new ideas into something that's old and traditional, the chances of them working is a little more harder. So it's really important that we actually disable the whole entire business model and rebuild it from the beginning. Sounds scary, I know, but I can see that actually happening in the coming years, that we slowly disable the old traditional business model that we're also used to and rebuild a new one that actually works and is more sustainable. I was a big fan of smart textiles. That's actually what got me into innovation, was smart textiles. The idea of wearing a garment that looks after me. Imagine this, being able to tell me, you need to drink more water, or your sugar is too high. The idea of smart textiles is something that sounds very futuristic, but actually already exists. You know, there's a lot of collaborations between fashion, technology, and the medical industry. So creating garments that actually help them monitor the person's vitals without actually having to connect them to anything. So smart textiles is something that I foresee happening. I think it's slowed down a little bit in the last few years, but I really think that in terms of textiles, we can really find this working and coming out and being much more important. A lot of it is used in companies like people who work in warehouses, firemen, you know, people in that type of work where they need their vitals monitored or they need the safety capacity. But I actually foresee a future of us wearing garments that are smart textiles, that are linked to our phones, and they let us know and they look after our health and so forth. So I actually foresee a future like that. Manufacturing needs a big overhaul. A lot of the innovations that are taking place do not actually fit in with today's manufacturing. So when it comes to new kind of technologies being put into the manufacturing processes, I'm not talking about robots that take away people's jobs. I'm talking about technology that makes the job much easier and much more safer for those who are doing it. Technology plays a really big role in helping us be sustainable. It really, really does. And a lot of people are always afraid when I mention that word technology because they feel like I'm just kind of pitching some story, some idea, like trying to sell you the dream. I'm not at all a dream seller. What I'm trying to introduce to people is the idea of innovation helping them do better. Innovation actually taking out that stress and the demands and helping you do better. As I mentioned earlier, I teach at the university. Whenever I talk to the students about innovation, they look at me like, we want to be authentic designers. What do you mean technology? We want to be like Gucci and Valentino. And they don't use innovation. Well, actually, they do. And that shows you that they use innovation in a way that you don't even notice that they're using technology. And that is what technology is about. It's about an invisible helper for the industry. Okay, I've written some facts there for you guys to have a look at what is important when it comes to sustainable textiles. Because I feel like that word sustainability, like I mentioned earlier, is thrown around a lot, but there's not much understanding of what it means in terms of the textile industry. So to be a sustainable textile brand, what does that mean? It basically means that you are taking into consideration certain factors that makes your whole approach a little different. It doesn't mean being completely 100% sustainable, it means doing less bad. That's all we're asking. We need the industry to do less bad, and then we'll take it from there. So when it comes to the next 5 years, I really foresee a lot of textile brands trying to do less bad, and I also see a lot of new brands, new types of materials coming into play to actually help the fashion industry move away from more traditional textiles and move more towards new types of textiles that are a lot more eco-friendly. So when it comes to some practices that are taking place, I'm sure most of you recognize all of these. And most of them, let me just tell you, as wonderful as they all sound, they're not all 100% sustainable. There's no such thing. Just letting you know that. I'm not going to sit here and sell you the dream. At the moment, it's all about doing less bad. And a lot of these practices right now help fashion brands do less bad. So how effective is sustainable practices? Before I answer that, how many of you think that the industry is becoming more sustainable? This side of the room is very active. Thank you. Yes. Better. We're still at the educating process, which is what I mentioned to you earlier, that we're educating an industry currently. But we need to move past that. We need to no longer try to convince an industry to be sustainable. We need to make them sustainable. It needs to not be an afterthought. It needs to be something ingrained in how they go forward. So what's the future expectations? I've noticed I've put bolt threads up there. I did this presentation, I presented it 2 months ago. And if most of you know, bolt threads no longer exists. That's how quick it is sometimes. It's brutal out there. Bolt Threads was a company, well, it was actually a bunch of scientists who came up with a new type of textiles, and they worked with Stella McCartney to create clothes and collections from that textiles. And it's unfortunate that even though they were given $300 million, they still closed shop. And it's more down to scaling. That's the biggest problems with startups. How can we scale it and make sure that everyone has access to it? So bolt threads, unfortunately, do not exist anymore. But if you were to Google them, you'll get to see some of the work that they did with Stella McCartney. And then I've actually mentioned some other brands as well up there. So I think in the future, what we're looking for is for companies not to go out of business. And the only way they won't go out of business is if you guys adopt the technology or at least educate yourself from the innovation. Another way as well is look at it like when it comes to being sustainable, it's actual something that will make you money in the future. So we need to kind of rewire our minds and not look at textiles, sustainable textiles, as something that costs a lot of money, that will damage my bottom line. Look at it like, actually, if I invest in this now, I will make money in the future. So I'm going to quickly run through, because I've got a feeling I've got like 3 minutes to talk to you about policy and make it sexy. It's going to be very, very hard for me to do. But there's a lot of regulations coming into play. How many of you are aware of the regulations that are coming into play? Ish. Okay, then. I guess I'll just scare the other 94% that didn't put their hand up. These rules and regulations have come into play or are coming into play because the fashion industry has been self-regulating itself for such a long time and no change happening that the government or the EU decided to be like, actually, fashion, let me take you by the hand and show you how it's done. So what they're doing is that they're putting in place legislations like the DPP, which is the Digital Product Passport, as an example of one, which means that fashion brands and also textiles as well will need to let people know how that product is made. So for example, this. I will need to know exactly how it was made, what kind of material it was made out, what kind of conditions it was made in. And it's requiring for you to be able to kind of produce or sell in the EU, you need to comply to these legislations. So it's a pretty scary 2 years coming right now because a lot of fashion brands are like, what? What do you mean? I need to know my entire supply chain? I don't need to know that. Oh, yes, you do. So a lot of the legislations that are coming into play are all about how can we make the fashion industry healthier? How can we make the fashion industry level out their playing field so everyone has the perfect start? And also, how can we make sure that the definition aligns with everybody? Human rights is something else that's coming up. In the next 5 years, I expect human rights to be topic of the conversation. So what does this mean? It means that a lot of people, when it comes to sustainability, whether it's in textiles or fashion brands, they only think of the product. They think about, what is it made out of? How was it made? But they're not thinking about the person who makes it. The only way your product is going to be sustainable, really sustainable, is that you look at the entire supply chain. So you're not only looking at the fabric and how it was made, you also look at the person who's making it. Are they working in good conditions? Are they getting a fair wage? Only then can you say to me that your product is sustainable. The anti-waste, which is something that I think everyone's been talking about with France and everything. The anti-waste law, I think, is really, really important because a lot of us don't really know what to do with our waste. And it's one thing to say, don't shop in Primark, don't shop in H&M, but we're all wired to shop. So it's going to be a long process to rewire how we shop. So forcing us to actually think about our clothes and our waste legally, I think is a good thing. And then the circular economy, which I think is a word that everyone's heard like 1,000 times. I love the fact that the EU is getting involved in this space because it's actually helping create clarity. So we're all understanding what needs to be done and we're all on the same page. And that's how you need to view all these new legislations that are coming into play in the next 5 years, is that what they're doing is making sure we're all on the same page and we all understand what we need to do. I won't talk about carbon emissions, I won't bore you, because I know I've got a few minutes left. Waste management, already mentioned that, and then opportunities and growth. This is what I predict in the next 5 years taking place when it comes to opportunities and growth within the textile space. And I think it's kind of loads of numbers and percentages, which can mean nothing to loads of you. But what is good about it, it kind of gives you an idea of the progression. So if you look at these numbers, and then you look at the predictions of, let's say, 2018 to 2020, and you compare, you'll see there's a slight change in that we're getting better. And I think that kind of is a good way of letting people know that we are moving in the right direction. I mentioned earlier medical textiles. I won't go into this. Sorry, guys. I've got literally like a minute. And I want to really make sure I kind of give you things. So this is the challenges and the strategies. So what I've done in this presentation, I normally do a presentation full of videos and colors and pictures. But today I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to basically give you more kind of like the challenges and strategies. So what it means is like, this is the challenges that we're facing, and this is how we can actually solve the problem. And the reason why I included these particular challenge and strategy slides was to let you know that I know a lot of us face challenges, but very few of us actually know how to strategize and how to fix those problems. So I am more than happy to share this document with you guys. I can't go through it, unfortunately, because I think it's really important not to only focus on what the problems are, but to also think about the solutions that are available, the positive side of it. Because I think when there's a lot of negative talk about what we're not doing, it makes us do less. But if I'm able to show you the challenge and then also present the solution, I think it makes it a little bit more brighter, light at the end of the tunnel, if you may. So I'm happy to share some of that with you. Just moving through quickly, and some of the technologies that you need to invest in. When it comes to investing in innovation in general, you don't invest in everything, you invest in what works for you. And I've got so many slides, guys. I just want to get to the end. But I'm more than happy to share this with you, because I can see up there, Lisa's looking at me. Saying, there we go, found it. So I'm happy to share this with you. If you're curious and you want to know more about the solutions that are available, if you want to understand the challenges that we're facing, then do let me know. And I'm happy to share this really long, interesting document with you guys. Thank you so much for your time, and have a good show.